We spoke at the beginning about marriage, and now I want to speak about family life. And what do you understand by core values? I want to begin by sharing with you a story. It's a story of a man staying with his wife and his father and his son. And his wife said to him, "You either choose me or your father. I'm not prepared to stay with him." So under duress, he said, "Okay, it's you, I'll stay with you." And he was wondering, what should he tell his father? So he told his father, "Daddy, tomorrow I want to take our little boy to the mountainside, and I want you to accompany me." Unbeknown to the father, he packed some of his clothing and some food. As he went toward the summit of the mountain, he told his dad, "Remain here for a while, and I'll fetch you on my way back." So on the way back, he did not fetch him. And the father was wondering, what am I doing here for so long? And the son, the little boy, asked the father, "Daddy, Daddy, where's Grandpa? Where's Grandpa?" He said, "No, I left him there. He's not going to come home." And the boy started crying. He said, "Please, Daddy, please don't do this, because when you get old, I'll do the same thing to you." Immediately the father became remorseful. He turned the cart, he went up, and he fetched his father. And he began to apologize profusely. Look at the wisdom of the father. He said, "My beloved son, I knew you could not leave me here to die, because I never did that to my father." Now the reason I'm starting off with that sometimes we think the world is an end in itself. You're going to be tested. There are people who intrude into your life. Sometimes you do not have space in the marriage, But these are painful things, I can understand. But when things can be changed, they should be changed. Now the question is, in the end, are values important? Do you have values at home? Can values be transformed into day-to-day reality? What legacy you think you are leaving behind? How would you like to be remembered by members of your own family? I asked my wife this. I said to her, "Darling, when I die, if someone were to ask you, in 3 sentences describe Idris," and she used to cry. I learned afterwards there were tears of joy. No, I'm joking. No. So in 3 sentences, what would come to your mind? And these are important things, That's why Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, "Must die before your death." It's about reflecting on who you are, reflecting on what are the values we stand for. And I am also reminded of one family. Their value was truth above harmony. And their son, one day over a weekend, decided to drive the father's car when the mom and dad were out for the weekend. And he smashed the car. The father came to the garage and he said to him, "My son, who did this?" He said, "I did it, Daddy." He said, "Well, my son, you're going to report it to the police station." "But Daddy, I do not have my license." "It's okay. You're going to report it." He said, "My son reported to the police station. I accompanied him. And he was incarcerated for one evening." And he said that was a lesson he'll never forget. Now that was a value they stood by. You've got to speak the truth even if it hurts. And I'm not suggesting that should be the only value. But values informs behavior. Values informs attitudes. And whilst we know we can speak glibly about the values all of us should espouse, but as a family, we need to understand what are going to be our values. And your values can be spiritual values, relationship values, personal values, and character values. And the questions we need to ask ourselves, fundamental. What do you understand by family? What does our family mean? How do you define that? How do you, for example, speak about what kind of relationships you should have in our family? And I remember in one workshop, it was a 1.5-day workshop, and one of the sisters said to me that of all the things you said, one thing changed our home. I said, "What did I say?" "You said to us that the less you shout, the less your children would shout. The less you speak, the more they would listen." And he said, when I started doing that, suddenly there's no shouting at all, right? Suddenly there's respect. An important thing is this, that it is often when there is a problem, a challenge, then we can study it. It can be very didactic. We need to take lessons from it. It cannot change overnight because it is said, if we do the same things the same way every day, expect the same results. The other important thing is this. What do we value as a family? What should be our guiding principles? Are there families that we like to emulate? What do we admire about those families? And it's something you can do with everyone around you. And one of the exercises we do often in a workshop, I would ask, for example, the wife to draw up very quickly what are some of the families, some of the values we need to subscribe to. Ask the husband to do the same thing. And then I ask each one of them to prioritize those values. Let's choose 5 values, for example, right? Then the next step I say to them, when you go home, get your kids involved in it. And once they become a part of the process, and then we discuss what do you mean that we as a family are going to speak kindly to each other. How does it translate into that reality? And I believe very strongly, one of the missing dimensions in a home is that we do not subscribe clearly to real values as such. Anything happens is more ad hoc, you know. It's not something we sit down together and discuss and eternalize. And when that becomes a meaningful part of your life, it makes a huge difference. A few months ago, I went to my friend's place in Johannesburg. And I knock at the door, and his son comes to the door. The son is about 10 or 11 years old. I told him, Assalamu alaikum. He said, Assalamu alaikum, uncle. And he gave me a hug. And I said to him, you are like my family. He said, no, Uncle Idris, you are our family. Look at that. Right? So I brought my bags and all that. No, I'm just joking. Got the neighbors on. No. So what happened was this, I sat down, he asked me, Uncle, do you want something to drink, some tea? Now, it's quite clearly that this is the kind of etiquette of his family. Remember this, as you said, they said apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Children mimic adult behavior. And also, in giving our children what we did not have, we've forgotten to give them what we had. And my favorite is, we are living at a time where the father does the providing, the mother the deciding, and the children the overriding. What I'm saying to each one of you is, let us start having a conversation. Let us start talking about things. Let us talking about how we can have a meaningful relationship. I was just sharing with some of you earlier on. I have 5 other brothers. Often I exchange pleasantries with them, you know. Imran, how are you, man? How's the wife? How's the family? It's almost mechanistic, you know. Almost mechanistic. So what happened? One day I said I'll make a conscious effort to have an authentic conversation with him. So I sat down in his office. I said, Imran, how are you, my brother? Immediately it resonated with him. I said, how are you doing? I'm your big brother, Imran. Is there anything I can do for you or your family? After 5 minutes, he began to tear. After 10 minutes, he told me, Idris, you know what? Of all the conversations I had with you, this was something I'll never forget. These are important things, to have authentic conversations. In other words, do you value him? Is your brother? Do you value your husband, your wife? If you do value them, why do you not celebrate them? Why don't you love them? Why don't we sit as a family and say, we will make family a critical priority. We would support each other. We would not be abrasive. We would not judge each other, but we will accept each other for who you are.
Bringing that into a real into reality, I think it's something which should be done ideally before you get married. That you have a safe space that you say to your wife or your partner that I want to create. And in my idea, I'd like to have a semi-formal space, you know, almost mechanic, once a month, once every 2 months. This is the time we talk about anything, you know, and to have that conversation beforehand and to that's the way I see it. But can you see other ways of in terms of real, how do you bring about that into a relationship, making it actually happen? Because having that conversation, starting that conversation is very difficult. That's the hardest thing, I think.
You know, I subscribe to what you are saying. The reality is many people are married, right? And in fact, I know those people who are committed. In fact, parenting is a very important paradigm shift. It's not so much your relationship with your child, but your relationship with your spouse. In fact, I find when husband and wives are civil towards each other, polite, they're loving and they're caring, you find children embrace that. They embrace how to disagree in an agreeable fashion. And one of the things that I mentioned, I've said earlier on, that if you can do 3 things, develop a family routine. And part of the routine is maybe once a week, we need to talk about the issues of developing family values. That might take much longer initially. Then you talk about family goals. And once you begin to do that, you make that a single most important priority. You know, I know many people have many visitors coming in and out. But those, you know, if you feel very strongly about your family, let us say we decide as a family on a Monday evening or on every day for half an hour, we're going to read a book, a novel, whatever it is. We'll pick up a book. We'll sit together without engaging in a conversation to develop the habit. If someone comes to the home, tell the brother, you know what, I'll be half an hour, but do you mind sitting it? You can pick up a book yourself, right? So people begin to understand there is some rituals as a family that do need to take place. Because without those rituals, without affirming each other, you find that the family is really connected biologically, you know, like borders coming to the same home. I see in homes, many homes, that, you know, you come as a zombie. One day my wife, may Allah bless her, I was so preoccupied, she told me, Idris, look at you. You're not even looking at me today. You're like a zombie. And that was a turning point, and she was right. You go to restaurants, you go to some homes, the mother and father are busy with their cell phones while they're eating. The kids are busy with cell phones, right? So there isn't the kind of respect for the mealtime. In fact, studies have shown that a family that has 5 meals a week together, without these intrusions, they are far happier. They have a commonality of vision. They say the kids do well at school. They're not prone to violence. And we have underestimated that kind of value, right? Television has become the 3rd parent, right? The kids' minds are mesmerized by it, right?
First parent.
Hey?
The first parent.
Yeah, it's true, right? Okay, South Africa is becoming the 2nd, you know, but we are getting there. Yeah. But the point, you make a good point, that should be part of the training initially. But what is important, we need to do that. And you know what? I think, for me, this is for me, my personal growth, for me, I think we have left Allah out of this equation. Right? We think it's through our smartness, through all our energies that food comes to the table. Yes, you know, yes, we've got to work for it. But we become so obsessed with it, so busy with it. We overdo it to such a point that the people for whom the food is brought, they don't even know you. Allah forbid, the day a father dies or mother dies and the kid says, well, I don't know who this person was. I do not know what to feel. And it happens. It happens. You know. So inshallah, if we begin to do these things, and you find throughout, you know, my recurring theme is again about love each other, understand each other, forgive each other, work together. Because if you do not have family, you have nothing. You can have the best of friends, but you have nothing. And that's very important, you know.
I think you're right about the family dynamics, in the sense I think often our homes become just a pit stop. You know, everybody's busy, everybody's rushing, everybody's got a million things to do, and that routine that you need to connect to each other just doesn't happen, and everybody's connected to some kind of technology. And just to have 1 hour, even a day, just 1 hour where you say all technology off is very difficult to do often. And it requires a phenomenal amount of self-discipline, because sometimes you make a good intention and you do it twice maybe, and then you get back into your bad habits. So to continue to do that is a very difficult thing.
Yeah, and you see, that's a point. You've got to ask yourself, are you prepared to accept the consequences of it?
Yeah.
That's one. The second critical dimension is this. I was reading somewhere, they said the home and the workplace have reversed the roles. The home place is a place where the people want to beat the clock. whilst the workplace is a wellness center where they're speaking with calmness to each other, right? And a recurring question, right? It's not sexist, but I'll say it, right? They say, are you a housekeeper or a homemaker? It's a big difference. Are you a housekeeper or a homemaker? If we look at our conversation with the kids, it's more interrogation than a conversation, right? And it's about really beginning to reflect strongly and making a commitment. Change is difficult. It is very, very difficult because we are creatures of habit, right? Very, very difficult. And it's a process. You'll have your lower moments, but once you go through it, it makes a huge difference. I remember one of my friends, he was renovating his place, and as a result, there was no connection to the internet, and there was no wireless at that time, no television. He said, Idris, in a small space, I'm going to know my kids. We are talking to each other. We are hugging each other. Now each one got their own room, right? The minds are, we are isolated and alienated from each other. Even eating becomes like a recurring nightmare. I've eaten already, we do not even share that.
I understand. I think talking about premarital relationships, one thing that is really key, important, is for the person to know themselves and work on themselves before they even get into a relationship. Because what I'm finding, I've been married for many years now, over 10 years, but what I've seen in many relationships is that I find people getting married but not dealing with themselves, not knowing themselves. So when they're going into a relationship, they're carrying so much baggage in that causes lots of issues.
What you're saying is something that we've been speaking about. I think we need to ask ourselves, what is it that motivates us? What is it that makes me happy? It may not make your spouse happy, right? You've got to understand all of these things. What are the mental blocks in your life? And why do you, like one of the things that I mentioned, is that we do not see the world as it is, but as we are. It's a very, very powerful, powerful statement. And if we understand that we are products of different environments. Not all of us, have taken ownership of our life. Many of us are like spectators in our own life. We see our life going in front of us. Right? We make assumptions, lots of assumptions. And I think when you get to know who you are, it makes a huge difference. And similarly, when you are engaging with your spouse, tell yourself, okay, fine, I know I'm going to know myself. Let me get to know my wife. There was a story where the husband and wife used to fight quite regularly. And she said one day, I'm going to stop. She said to the husband, he nearly died of shock actually. He said to him, darling, what will make you happy? He said, you serious with that question? And I'm not too sure what he said. It wasn't something, huge. And she said, once I started, when I understood that, both of us found happiness.